And welcome back to Immigration Ain't Easy. And welcome to 2025. We have a new year upon us, and it's going to be an interesting one. And I'm excited and honored to have with me Representative Naquetta Ricks. Representative Ricks is the first African immigrant to be elected to the Colorado legislature. She's a Liberian American, and she's the first Liberian American to be elected to any state legislature. So it's really a high honor for me to have her here. I'm having her on to talk about her story and how she had fled Liberia with her family and settled in Aurora, Colorado, and has been able to do some amazing things with her opportunity, including starting her own small mortgage brokerage business. She's also founded the African Chamber of Commerce in Colorado. And she has taken her role as a leader into legislation and legislature, where she has created some interesting legislation that I look forward to talking to her about, including the creation of an immigrant legal defense fund, immigration legal defense fund. And so I am thrilled to have you on with me. And thank you for joining me, Representative.
Good morning, Mo, and Happy New Year to you. I'm thrilled to be here.
I was just telling Representative Ricks that I just kind of stumbled upon your story when I was reading about Aurora, Colorado, and a lot of news that was coming out of there last year because of the accusations of Venezuelan gangs running rampant all over Aurora, which was ultimately proven not to be the case, as far as it being such a rampant problem. Um, and I was like, wow, what an interesting backstory that you have. And it really fits perfectly to the narrative of this podcast. So let me just start off by asking you, you came to the United States from Liberia. Tell us a little bit about the story of how you came here and what went down and everything, that led you to get to Colorado of all places.
Yeah, and thank you so much. So in 1980, Mo, there was a military overthrow of the government, which basically a military coup d'état. And in that backdrop, my family, my mom, I lived with my mother, my sister, in a suburb of the capital city, Monrovia. And that morning, we woke up April morning, we woke up to gunfire in the city. And we didn't know what was going on, but we knew we were hearing whispers of things and we weren't sure. We tried to turn on the radio, and there were no sounds of the radio at that time. There was just grinding. And then, right about 12 noon, a voice came on and said, I am Samuel K. Doe, and he had overthrown the government of the Republic of Liberia. So everybody's like, oh my God, what does that mean? And about an hour or so after that, we had a pickup truck drive up to our driveway. Three soldiers emerged out of the pickup, came into the house asking for my mom, and they started to kick everybody out the house, shooing them out. Get out, get out, get out. So my sister and I had gone out, but then we creeped back in. The soldiers were, we creeped back in to see the soldiers interrogating my mother, asking for her fiance, who was a government official, and he represented the Ministry of Agriculture. So he was the Minister of Agriculture. They searched our house while they were and one soldier started searching the house. Two soldiers held my mom at gunpoint, and we were kind of peeking under the door watching this, me and my sister. When they found my mom's fiance, Dr. Bright, they dragged him and my mother to our driveway. They threw him in the back of the pickup truck, and by the grace of God, they left my mom. Within a few days, they had rounded up all members of the government, 13 ministers in total. They tied them up in front of a military tribunal on a beach. They shot them by firing squad. And basically, that was like a very bloody, overthrow of the government. Meanwhile, when the soldiers left, we knew that we were not safe in the house. So we quickly packed up one suitcase apiece and we fled to a relative's house in the city. Within a couple months of that, my mom asked for a medical leave of absence because she was just so traumatized. We were all traumatized, and she were able to come, and we landed in Chicago. I remember landing in Chicago in June of 1980, and I had on a long African gown. It was my first time seeing an escalator. So I had to step up to this escalator, and I was very scared because I was like, "Am I going to trip?" As the stairs started to move and stuff, and trying to gain my balance. But yeah, that was how my family ended up here in the U.S.
Let me ask you, coming from Liberia, did you have like a visa, or how did you get, or do you know how your mother was able to get you to the United States?
So we basically came on visitor visas. Yeah, so it was a visitor visa. Now, my mom and dad had been married and they got married, I guess, here in the US. They both knew each other. I mean, they were dating from there. They came on government scholarships, got married. My dad had an a master's degree in agriculture from UC Davis. My mother had an undergraduate degree in biology from Pepperdine University. So they were both very college educated people. And then went back home to work for the government. So, Liberia at one time was a very thriving place and a very, just a beacon of hope of what, Africa could be. So, yeah, so that's how we came. We came on visitor visas in 1980.
Have you seen the movie Coming to America?
I have.
Okay. I just envision that sort of scenario, like when Eddie Murphy arrives in Queens and he's in, his traditional African garb, and
Hmm.
then all the people in the neighborhood steals everything, and he looks around, everyone's dressed up, and um, so like at that point, you had experienced like a very high level of trauma, and so did the rest of the family. Did you receive any sort of therapy, or like how did you overcome such a traumatic situation in your life?
Well, Mo, it's so interesting when we talk about trauma. And in the last 10 years, I think is when I've become familiar with the impact of trauma. Coming as a young girl with my mom, we were just fortunate, is how we saw our lives, to have escaped. Many of the families that were visited by the soldiers, people were raped, people were killed. We felt so fortunate to have escaped with our lives. I think for my mom, though, she died within about 11 or 10 years of coming and from breast cancer. And I think that, she was so traumatized and by everything that happened. And maybe being young, we didn't quite understand. All we knew was we were uprooted. And all I knew was because that, here we are in the land of opportunity. And we knew that we were going to college. And so I put all my efforts and strength into studying and going to school to graduate and to go to university. And so that was what happened for both me and my sister. I think even more traumatizing from that was that my mom died within about 11 years of us coming. So by the age of 23, my mom was gone and she was everything that we had. So I think that was, when we talk about trauma, that was traumatic for me because I never thought about my mom dying. So that was heartbreaking for both me and my sister. Yeah.
Before you left Liberia, before this like dramatic coup, um, what was life like for you in Liberia? Was it a happy existence? Like, what sort of memories do you have of your life in Liberia at that time?
I have fond memories of my life in Liberia. We lived an upper middle class life. My mom worked, she was educated. My dad also worked for government, even though my mom was divorced. Um, I remember playing with my friends in the neighborhood. I wanted to be like a African dancer, like a cultural dancer. So one of the biggest joys I had was having like collecting all my friends and having them be my dance troupe. And we played. I climbed trees. I killed snakes in my backyard. I mean, I just ran free, and it was a beautiful existence. So I enjoyed the food. I mean, we were free, and then all my friends at school, but all of that was upended just suddenly and abruptly. And then we came here to the US and hadn't to start all over. So yeah.
So you get here, and then it seems like, and you can confirm it to me based off of your story, there was a time where you did not have like a legal status in the United States, and you were the beneficiary of then President Reagan's amnesty program. Is that correct?
That's correct. So coming, we were on visitor visas. During that period, we were able to register for school because we moved to Colorado by August of that year. My mom had two sisters that were here in university. And so we moved and were able to be registered in school. And then when Ronald Reagan uh, did the first comprehensive immigration policy, which was amnesty, we were then able to begin the process of becoming, a U.S. citizen. So first we went through the temporary, resident application. Then we got qualified again, I guess, a couple years later for the green card situation, and then ultimately becoming citizens of the U.S.
Now, I was gosh, I was in high school at the time, so I have no
Mhm.
recollection of and I didn't have to benefit from that program. So I don't really have a lot of recollection, but I've heard a lot of stories and I've talked to a lot of people about that time. Um did you get help from like a church? I mean, I know a lot of people went to like churches to get
Mhm.
assistance with the paperwork and everything. Did your family get any help in doing any of this, bureaucratic paperwork?
I'm sure we did. Yeah, the one memory I have of that time was standing in line with a bunch of Latinos, and they're looking at us like, "Why are you guys in this line?" I guess they thought we were like African Americans. So it was so funny, I guess nobody knows what the face of an immigrant looks like, but yeah, I'm certain that we did. I don't remember exactly the details. What was interesting was my mom got married to an American citizen. He was from Louisiana, and he actually tried to get to fill out the immigration forms and stuff for us. But I'm not sure what happened. That never went through. I don't know, something about they couldn't find his birth certificate. It was really
Mm.
weird, but that was the pathway that was ordained for us to, get our U.S. citizenship through that amnesty program.
And what you described there is a very common problem for a lot of immigrants, where maybe a document is missing, and even in the case where the U.S. citizen doesn't have the document. I
Hmm.
mean, it is so technical, and all it takes in many instances is not having a specific piece of paper
Hmm.
that can differentiate from being somebody who has no legal status to becoming a U.S. citizen. It's
Absolutely.
kind of crazy, and you see that quite often, unfortunately. So you get your residency, and then in what year did you become a naturalized U.S. citizen?
It was sometime in the
If you
90s, early
Okay.
90s, and I don't remember exact a year. I know I was working at the time now. I had graduated college and everything,
Mhm.
and I went through the whole naturalization process, taking the test, and then ultimately, swearing in to become a citizen. And that was quite the moment. It's like, wow. Because we have been here now since the 80s. So it was like, I don't know, at least 12 plus years later, I guess, after we had come in the 80s. But yeah. I do remember that situation.
I would imagine that at least coming to the United States with the ability to speak English was probably, a significant benefit for you as far as assimilating. Would that be accurate or no?
I would say that was fair, yeah. But then I also admire those that don't speak a word of English. People that speak their native dialects, but yet they still thrive and they get through schooling. Whether they're speaking French or
Mhm.
some native dialect, they still are so motivated. And I think that's what you see with immigrants, right? That resilience. That no matter where you come from, once you get that opportunity, you're going to seize that moment and you're going to like work hard to really get through. So I admire that. But yes, having that, and I think having a really good foundation. I remember going to college, my first year in college, in my English class, and writing. And my teacher saying, "Oh, you can write complete sentences." There's always like these thing, like as if to say they expect less of you because maybe of your background, but yet, we always step up and do above and beyond what it takes. And but yeah, yes, I think having being able to speak English, having a good because we attended private schools when we were in Liberia, so we came with a solid foundation and a really strong desire to learn. And that was instilled in us through my mom and my dad.
So when you got to Colorado, were you raised in Aurora?
Yes, I've lived in
Okay.
Aurora. Yeah, I came 1980. We lived in Aurora. Aurora has always been a melting pot. As you know, it's like the fourth most diverse city in the US. One in four persons here say that they are either first generation or their parents were first generation. So, it's highly, and people from all over the world, whether it's Russia, Korea, Ukraine, Congo, we're all here in this beautiful melting place. So I'm a graduate of Aurora Central High School, and then I went on to University or Metro State University, and had my undergraduate degree in accounting, and then went on to get my MBA from the University of Colorado.
And Aurora, for anyone who's not aware, is a suburb of Denver. And so when you were in high school and, basically starting over from being in Liberia, um, was it easier because you had so many different people from all around the world in your area? Was that the case at that time?
No, so what's interesting is in my high school, there was one other Liberian that came during that time, I think probably around the military coup. We didn't have that many, a high black population, actually. We thought that most of the Denver schools were the cooler schools because they had more black people there. And, we all wanted to be, in Denver or East High or whatever, Montbello High. I was at Aurora Central, it was kind of like, oh my God, we're here in the burbs. But no, it was not heavily uh, populated. I think it was the 70s, though, that the first African immigrants started to come. They were Ethiopians fleeing like the famine and different things. And then over time, more and more people have come. But between in the last 19, 20 years, so I would say from 1990 to roughly 20, is it 1990? Well, in the last 20 years, we've had a huge influx, like 400% increase in the African immigrant population. But all of these different populations have continued to come. So, no, it's become more and more. And I think the cost of living has been a draw because Denver has become more and more expensive. And Aurora, had a better value as far as housing. That's increasing too. But yeah, I think it changed. We've seen like a total sea change since over the last 40 years.
I thought I lost you there for a second. You still
No, I'm
there?
here. Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we've noticed, at least in my practice as an immigration attorney, I've noticed a huge difference in the people who come for assistance in my office. We've seen a large influx of Burundians,
Hmm.
Cameroonians, people from Rwanda and the DRC. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen a significant increase in that population of individuals immigrating and seeking asylum in the United States because of the problems that they're having in those countries.
Yes, and that's true. When the Venezuelans came in, there was a large group of people that came in too that were also, African immigrants, and people were like, "Who are these people?" At first, they thought they were, I don't know, like from Latin America somewhere, but it was like, oh my God, so there's so much migration going and migration patterns based on, famine, political unrest, and just people trying to find that better life. Climate change also is driving all of this. So, um, yeah, I mean, and America has always been a nation of immigrants. So,
So, what motivated you to get into the political arena? I know that you do have some ancestry that was in politics in Liberia. For example, your paternal grandfather, John Henry Ricks,
mhm.
your maternal step grandfather also was in politics. Um, was that partly your motivation was to keep on that sort of tradition, or was it something internally that and maybe a combination that you were like, hey, I want to make this country better. I feel like I can offer something even on the local level.
And thank you for the question. It's so interesting. I never set out to be a politician, Mo. I did not see myself being in politics. I always thought to myself, I'm kind of shy. I don't know that I want to be out there. But I think what drives me is the fact that America has given me my opportunity to create my American dream. And what gives me the most pleasure in life is helping others to achieve their highest potential. So I started by working in my church, like, volunteering there. I also work with the Aurora Public School Education Foundation to help raise money for scholarships for kids to go to college. And then just being visible and trying to help people, whether to help them navigate systems or situations, find problems and solutions. As a mortgage broker, I went through a really tough time when the bubble burst out of the mortgage industry in the market. My house went through foreclosure. And so, navigating that, I saw that there were many people who were also navigating those hard times, and people needed a voice to also talk about those things. So in 2013, I was approached by Senator Angela Williams to go through Emerge for political training. And so I seized that moment and went through, and they were like, "Well, what are you going to run for?" I then decided that I would run for the Board of Regents for CU. CU is one of four universities in the United States that elects their Board of Regents. I ran for that seat, and I had over 100,000 plus votes in 2014, but I lost and I didn't win. Then in 2017, I decided to go back again and run for city council in Aurora. I came in third place. So seemingly, it was like people were like, "Wow, Naquetta, you're very smart and you're really nice. Maybe, politics is not your thing." And so,
And you persisted.
I persisted. And then in 2019, my state representative, Senator Janet Buckner, moved to the Senate. And so it was an open seat. I could not declare to run right then because I was working for the US government, working with the 2020 census. And as a government employee, you could not, run for office. So my situation changed later that year where I was able to get a different job situation. And then I declared that December of 2019. By that time, another uh, uh, person within the community had already declared. He was one of the party people. He declared and had a whole year on me. He had all the endorsements locked up. And then by March of 2020, COVID then struck. So I raised about 12 to $13,000, and he had over 160,000 that was spent because they opened an independent expenditure for him. And so the primary basically was the race. When the ballots dropped in June, I had enough money to send out one mailer to say, hey, vote for Naquetta Ricks, and then another one within about 2 weeks later to make sure that I could, get people to vote for me. Meanwhile, my opponent had two to three mailers every day that came out during that 3 week period for him because he had so much money. Then I get a phone call from a constituent. The constituent says, hey, Naquita, we just saw this large negative mailer that that your opponent took out on you. Is any of that true? I panicked, Mo. I ran to the mailbox. I'm like, oh my God, what? So I opened up my mailbox. Sure enough, there's this 11 by 17 piece of paper, and on there is like, Naquita Ricks is the perennial politician. Does she really live in her district? And they had clips and articles of my previous running. So they were trying to take a hit piece out on me. I just panicked. So I called my emerge consultant and I said, oh my God, I have no money. I mean, what do I do? She said, well, you just need to continue on with your plan. Do not let them throw you off, and just keep working. So I jumped on social media and I'm talking about the mailer, telling Aurora, hey, this is dark money. I am your Aurora girl. I bring the Aurora values, and I'm fighting for our jobs and fighting for our schools. And I'm like out there letting them know that they still need to vote for me and to ignore all of this dark money. And sure enough, the polls closed finally after 3 weeks. And on the night of election, I get a call from someone who had helped me on the campaign. She said, oh, polls just closed. You are at 49% and your opponent is at 51%. So you've ran a really good race. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting dressed. I got dressed. I went to the restaurant, met my team, and we celebrated, the moment. By the end of the night, around 10 o'clock, when they updated the polls, we're both now at 50-50 because the gap between me and my opponent from 51 to 49% was just 100 and something votes at the time, and at that point. So we're like, okay, yeah. So we're like, oh my God. So we go to sleep. And then by 12 noon the next day, Arapahoe County updated the polls. At that point, the numbers flipped. I was now ahead by about 60 something votes, and but it was still too close. By 2 p.m., I'm on my way to lunch, and someone calls me and says, okay, so they just updated the polls, and you are 220 votes ahead. I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, I could actually win this thing because I knew at that point there weren't that many more votes left to count. And I started crying. I was laughing hysterically. I didn't know what to think. And then by 4 p.m., they updated again and my numbers kept going up. So I then declared myself as the winner. And so it was just a spectacular win. I went on to win the general election, and that landed me in the history books into the General Assembly of Colorado. And that was how that happened.
That's so awesome. And so you also maintain your business as a mortgage broker while you're doing your work in the public sphere. Is that correct?
Yes, I still have the mortgage company, but honestly, the interest rates have been really horrible. So the mortgage
Hmm.
business has been
Yeah.
down. I've been putting a lot more of my time in the African Chamber of Commerce, which is a place where we are trying to create economic wealth and grow wealth for immigrant owned businesses and African American owned businesses. So we do that through entrepreneurship classes. We have a 12-week course where we train women from all stages of their business. We help them with websites, business plans. We give them technical support, help them get access to capital. We we bring in speakers to teach them about bookkeeping and QuickBooks, and we just really try to be, everything that they need to support them and make their businesses more sustainable. Since we started doing that work, we've had three cohorts and we've graduated 77 small businesses to date. So that is a bone of achievement. And the chamber continues to be a trusted voice because we want to grow trade and investments between Africa and Colorado. So we put a lot of effort and emphasis in that.
I wanted to know, has having a community that helps lift immigrants up and give them opportunities, as I've seen in cities like Chicago and in Denver. It seems like those cities thrive and benefit because of the way they're helping immigrants get some sort of training and
Mhm.
education and giving them the tools to achieve, which it seems like our federal government has failed on doing so, and has made it more difficult for immigrants to get a work permit and to be able to accomplish and fulfill that American dream. What have you seen from an economic perspective, as far as the benefits to Aurora from the groundwork that you and others have laid to try and help new immigrants, build from basically nothing in many cases?
And I totally agree that, the Office of New Americans, such as in Denver and other states, or in Colorado and other states, is a huge, huge help for immigrants coming in. Most of our labor here is, because the largest immigrant population are Latinos. And so Latinos are in our construction areas, they work in our restaurants, they help with our food, they help in every part. There's African immigrants too that are heavily within the medical field, helping take care of our elderly, our sick, our shut in, and without that labor, our economy suffers. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was at the Brown Palace, and there were long waits for the food, and that's a 5-star restaurant, a 5-star hotel, I should still establishment. But I don't know, I think people are already maybe getting scared with all of the rhetoric that's coming, and the impact that immigrant labor has on our economy cannot ever be understated. With all of the construction that's happening in Colorado, in our new developments, in everything that's happening, the nursing, the healthcare, the hotels, the entertainment industry, we are going to suffer if all of this talk of deportation happens. I think people are already self-deporting. We're seeing that. So yeah, when you are able to help people to get training, get access to a work permit, they quickly get into work or start their own businesses. You'll find that um, immigrants are likely to start their own businesses 7 more times quicker than a native born American. And so these are all the different things that, immigrants bring to our economy and to the Colorado, to the US, and everywhere to go.
How you talked about the dark money in the election, that you had to deal with. On a similar token, how do we, or in your opinion, what's the best way to deal with the disinformation campaigns that are out there, um, especially when it comes to the constant disinformation or attacks on immigrants and what they are, the blight that they supposedly are to our country?
I think podcasts like this, where you're profiling people, that was one of the things that we talked about when we were doing a post-mortem on this last election. We did not see people really bring out the immigrants and tell those stories of the positive stories of the contributions that immigrants are truly making to this society. It was all about, oh my God, they're here to take and they're doing this and they're doing that. And there is a lot of anti immigrant sentiment coming. But if people, like for example, the law that did not go through where they were trying to get those who were asylum seekers a work permit, you have to wait more than 6 months to be even eligible for a work
Mhm.
permit. In the meantime, you're getting a little help from the federal government, but why not put those people to work? In fact, why are we looking at an immigration system that we're not fixing? Everybody does not have to be a citizen, but maybe give them the permission to work so that they're able to be here, work, send money back home to their families. They can, legally come and go just with the ability to work. I mean, that and people want that too, but we have to do something better than what we've done if we want to see change. Also, America does interfere in different countries. When you put embargoes against the Venezuela and they
Mhm.
can't sell their oil, how are they going to manage? People are going to flee. They're walking through three different countries just to get into the United States, all because they're trying to be safe and find a better home for they and their families. So people are not coming here because they just want to take. People are looking for that better life. And so we need to do something to change things and make it positive, because we really do need the labor. In Colorado, we say that we can't find enough labor and employees to fill all the jobs that we have. And immigrant labor fills a lot of that job demand and job supply here in Colorado and in other states.
Yep. And I actually was talking about this with, and you may know him, Adam Frisch, the
Yes,
one
I've heard.
who
I've
ran
heard.
up
Mhm.
in the like Aspen, Glenwood Springs. He was the one that got Lauren Boebert to
Yeah,
run away to a different
exactly.
district.
Yes, I
Uh,
know who he is.
but it was kind of amazing to me that like the population, especially around Rifle, Colorado, was so anti-immigrant and so into this whole MAGA Trumpism mentality. When you look around, and that entire area is so heavily dependent on immigrants, especially Latino immigrants and Hispanic immigrants who are doing all the building in the valleys and in the resorts. It boggled my mind, that people vote against their interest.
It's true, and I don't understand it. It's like, uh, it's just yeah. I mean, the people that came
Yeah.
out and that voted, for the whole Trump agenda was so surprising. Even some immigrants themselves, which was shocking.
Yep.
I got, yeah, and so we're still
It's
kind of
amazing.
yeah, we're still pondering over that. So
Yeah.
people need
Um,
to wake up.
well, let me
And
ask you,
hmm
you uh, you were instrumental in getting an immigration legal defense fund set up. Um, what as legislation? What can you talk about that? What was that, and what does that do?
Sure. Actually, and that was the honor of my life because it helped me to tell my story. When I got into the state house that first year, 2021, and sat, Representative Carrie Tipper was carrying that bill. And she said, "Oh my God, you are an immigrant, and we believe this is exactly what we're trying to protect. When you go through the immigration courts in the United States, that is the only court in the land where you are not presented with an attorney, where the public pays for it. So even if you are just a little girl, Latino girl, 11 years old, and you have to go through deportation, you will sit in the courthouse. They will have people talk about you, talk to you. You'll be there and you have to defend yourself. And so the Immigration Defense Fund is a fund that was set up. We started out with about $200,000, but basically it's for people who are going through deportation so that they're able to get legal help. And if you have a immigration lawyer or attorney representing you, you're 7 times more likely to, get a bond and be able to go and continue on with your life. If you have a job, continue to work. But if you don't have any representation, you will more than likely be deported. And Black immigrants frequently get deported more than any others. And so this fund goes to help and support people going through that process. And we were the first in the United States to set that type of a bill fund up.
Mm. And you note that people who are in immigration court do not have the right to legal counsel paid for by the government. They can have their own legal counsel that is often not very cheap. And there's not a lot of nonprofits out there that can offer that sort of legal assistance. And there's only so much pro bono assistance that goes around. One thing I'll also add is that usually in immigration court, you're up against basically two prosecutors. You have the prosecutor who is the ICE attorney, and oftentimes the judge, who is supposed to be an unbiased arbiter. They come out of the enforcement arena. And if you look at some of the data, you'll see that some of these judges deny almost 90 or 95% or even more of the claims for asylum that they see.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that is the
It's
only court
kind
in the
of
land. Yeah, that's the
mind
other.
boggling.
Oh, yeah, it is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And it's the court in the land. Yeah, if you speak English, you don't speak English. I mean, you would just be there defenseless, and they will throw the book at you basically and deport you. Yeah, that's the scenario.
So, has this defense fund been successful? Have you seen a good amount of traction with that?
Yes, so the defense fund has been successful, is a popular fund, and especially with all of the Venezuelans that just came in, that just happened last January. So in 2024 session, there was a slight increase that we were able to do through our budget, and we increased the line item for that fund and basically kind of grandfathered it in the budget. So that's a good thing. And we're still looking at the statistics. There were some talks about trying to expand it and to use some of it for different things, but we're going to keep it for people who are going through deportation, because that is a great need. And like you said, there's only a few nonprofits that will be able to provide pro bono work, and people are able to access the funds available through that fund, for nonprofit support for people going through the immigration process.
Just a few more questions for you. Have you written a memoir, or are you going to? Do you plan to write a book about your story?
Yes, absolutely. I already have a title, My Road to the State House, and I am, yeah, I've talked about it. I need to be right about it, and kind of like just, yeah, maybe between now and the end of the year, that would be my challenge for 2025, so that I can get something out.
Also, what's next for you? Do you have any objectives to move into other positions, political positions, or are you pretty content where you're at right now?
So I just ran for my third term in the Colorado State House. So I will run again. I have one more term in 26, and because you can run for a total of 8 years. As positions open, if it be for something in Senate,
Mhm.
I would love to run for something like that if that happens. Ultimately, I would love to see myself in Congress.
That'd be amazing. Have you gone back to Liberia since you came to the United States? Do you have family back there?
I still have lots of family there and friends. And yes, in 2018, after being gone for so many years, I made my first trip to Liberia. And it was really surreal because, I kept trying to picture, well, what is it going to be like? And holding on to the memories that I had as a, young girl coming and then seeing it. a lot of the country and the infrastructure has been, kind of gone through different wars. 1990, there was a war that came in with Charles Taylor and his group, and the country's under recovery. But then a lot of things that I remember, the beaches and the food, my friends, and different people. It was really great to connect. I actually now have been doing quite a few things. I've gone back every year. I was there just this for Christmas, around the Christmas holiday, where we're doing something for, I did an investment conference to help people coming from the diaspora to connect with local people there to create business opportunities. And I'm also the president of the Liberian Surfing Association, which was an opportunity that happened in 2018 when I found out that Liberia had the second best surfing waters in the world in the place called Robertsport. So that's a whole nother story. But yeah, but I'm very
Wow.
involved in Liberia, and excited to see, see what mark we can do to help with education and, just bringing opportunities there for people who are small businesses there.
Uh, if I'm not mistaken, didn't the Denver mayor say that he was not going to adhere to this, mass deportation Trumpism ideology, and then he ended up, facing the ire of Trump? What plans do you and your community have to try and push back on that, and to try to keep the population at some sort of ease, knowing that there's such a lot? I mean, the amount of rhetoric out there about like deporting people and
Mm.
scaring them into submission. Are there programs going on? I know that in Tucson, where I am, we're doing a lot of know your rights education and outreach. What are you guys doing up in the Aurora, Denver area?
So yes, there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of angst. People are scared. People are wanting to know what are my rights, and so the Know Your Rights campaign, who can ask you for your immigration papers. All of those things are, we're educating our immigrant population. We've also been talking a lot to the governor. Like, so if this was to happen, if the military was to be weaponized against the people to make them start dragging, immigrants into immigration jails or detention, what can be done? And some people say, oh, maybe it won't happen. I don't know that the governor has an answer, but we are prepared to act as a state legislature. We are looking at all of our laws to see if there's things that we can codify within, Colorado, to make sure that if things are being overturned on the federal level, that at least in Colorado, there are some things that are stable and that is still law in Colorado. So those are things we've been looking at here. But I'm part of the immigration task force for the House. And we are, just we're keeping a close eye on everything. But yeah, there is a lot of anxiety, and we are just watching everything very, very closely.
All right, my last question, and I just made this up out of the. Let's say I get a random listener who's a MAGA supporter.
Uh-huh.
Um, what what will you say, or what do you say to people who don't seem to understand immigrants? Like, what sort of message would you want to leave, at least to somebody who, thinks that, all these, problems are due to immigrants? What is your, like, let's say, final message to them on this?
My final message would be, don't believe the hype. This morning I spoke at a Rotary Club outside of Denver in Jefferson County, and a really elderly lady, probably like in her 80s, comes up to me. She says, "Oh, I haven't met you yet. You're our guest speaker?" I said, "I am." I say, "I'm from Aurora." She goes, "Oh, where you guys are eating the cats and eating the pets." So I said, so I
Oh
said,
man.
"No." I said, no, that's not true. And she said, that's what Trump says. Anyhow, I'm like,
Yeah.
I would say that it's easy to point a finger at the somebody, right? You're the guilty party. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
so things are going bad is the immigrants. It's, immigrants are not here to take anything. We're not takers. We really provide a whole lot of work. I mean, if the person who's picking your food is probably a migrant at that farm, your potatoes working in, with the cattle, working in the fruit orchards. When you see that people working at the hotels, people who are doing the construction, and look around you, and you will see the impact of immigrants all around you. They're working people trying to create a living for their family, but also contributing greatly to the tax base for Colorado. Immigrants here pay billions, millions of dollars in taxes, and are in every part of the labor force. So don't believe the hype. Start to maybe dig a little bit deeper. No one here is the enemy. I think we're all looking for the same things. We all want our kids to go to good schools. We all want to contribute to the tax base. We're not looking for a hand out. We're looking for or a hand up. We're working. We want to work. We
Hmm.
want to contribute. And so learn a little bit, dig a little bit, and don't take things at meets the eye, And really, if Trump says something, please stop believing him. He is not Jesus Christ. We're all fallible. We are all mankind, and you need to dig a little bit deeper.
Well, those are fine words to end this interview on. Thank you so much. You're an inspiration. The first African immigrant in the Colorado General Assembly, the first Liberian American woman to win a state assembly seat in the United States. You will always be in our history books, but also, I think most importantly, out of all of this, you're a humanitarian, and somebody who cares about others, and has demonstrated that amnesty actually works. I mean, people, sit around decry amnesty, but when we look back at a lot of the people who were the beneficiaries of the amnesty program, many of them have achieved some great things, whether it be small businesses, entrepreneurship, or even political office, to give back to others. So, thank you. It's really, like I said at the beginning, it's an honor to have you on with me, Representative Ricks. And I will be in Denver next summer. I will talk to you about that off of the podcast, but maybe we can meet up. And in fact, maybe I'll talk to some people about maybe having you come out and speak we're having an immigration lawyers conference in Denver. So I'll get you the
Oh,
details on that.
that would be awesome, Mo. And thank you so much. It's great to make your connection. And I hope we have all of your contacts because we're doing a lot of stuff around
Oh, yeah.
immigration. So love to keep in touch. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah, when you're in Denver, definitely connect. Let's meet up for sure.
And thank you for everyone who's listened in and been educated. Again, the podcast is Immigration Ain't Easy. And I have to always thank my 16-year-old daughter, Emma, who edits the podcast, and she'll have her work cut out for her with this one.